Okay, so today's class will be for Refuah Shalema, for Yehudis Hindel, Bashendel, Refuah Shalema, Kreva, speedily, and all goodness. Okay. So last time we were together a little while ago. We started chapter 27, Simon Chav Zayin Iggeres HaKodesh, and before we continue where we left off last time, so I want to say over an idea which I believe that I might have spoken about in the past, but it's very directly connected to the Perek that we are, this Perek, the Simon that we're learning right now, and it's also connected to the time that we're in right now. So right now, tonight is Rosh Chodesh, and Rosh Chodesh Iyar, and we know what's unique about the month of Iyar is that every single day of the month there's a special mitzvah, the mitzvah of Sfir Sa'imer. There's no other month that has a special mitzvah connected with every single day of the month. And it's not only a mitzvah that we do on every day, but it's a mitzvah where the day itself becomes the mitzvah. Like when you do your shake lulav and esrog, right? So what is the cheftzah shel mitzvah? What is the object with which you do the mitzvah? Is the lulav and the esrog, eat matzah, the matzah, a mezuzah. Over here, what is the object of the mitzvah? Is the day? You're counting the day, right? So the day itself becomes the elevated and object of the mitzvah. So special mitzvah Sfir Sa'imer, but we also know that Sfir Sa'imer is a time of avelus, it's a time of mourning. And why is it a time of mourning? Because the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva, the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva, they died during the Sfir Sa'imer. So we know the different minhagim, when it starts and when it stops, but upon him, Sfira in general is a time of, we know, according to Kabbalah especially, so the entire period between Pesach and Shavuos is a time of Gevuris, it's a time of severity, and therefore those who follow Kabbalah actually follow do the minhagim of Avelus for the entire Sfir Sa'imer. For the whole, not for all 7 weeks, you have not Chol Hamoed, but for the whole time. And again, what do we have over here? We have the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva who passed away, which obviously is a very big tragedy. Passed away in an epidemic. And until a few years ago, we had no idea what that meant. What does it mean? They died in an epidemic. And suddenly, a few years ago, we found out what an epidemic is.
What the period did they die?
When did they die?
No, not when. From the first one to the end. There are different periods.
33 days. We know that they died for 33 days. In a matter of 33 days, 24,000 students. Yeah, it's a tremendous tragedy. Think about it. If you do the math, that means that Rabbi Akiva was going to 800 levayas of 800 students a day for 33 days. Now, comes along in a few weeks, we're going to have Lag BaOmer. On Lag BaOmer, we take a break from all the mourning, and instead, we celebrate, and we have bonfires, it's the day of Simcha, and there is no Tachlon, we take our haircuts. What are we celebrating on Lag BaOmer? The passing of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who, by the way, was also a student of Rabbi Akiva. Now, how many of us have ever taken a moment to contemplate the irony of this? That for 33 days we're busy mourning. Why? Because students of Rabbi Akiva passed away. And then one day we stop, we say, today we're happy. Why? Because a student of Rabbi Akiva passed away.
Was he different than all the rest of the 23,999?
The rest of the 24,000. He wasn't part of the 24,000. What's your point?
Why is he more chashuv if he was also considered to be a student of Rabbi Akiva? Were they all great?
He wasn't part of the epidemic.
Well, yeah, but at the end of the day, the larger question still remains. The passing of a tzaddik, the passing of a great person, is it a reason why to mourn? Or is it a reason why to celebrate? If it's a reason to mourn, then why are we celebrating Lag BaOmer? If it's a reason to celebrate, then why are we mourning for the entire Sfir Sa'imer? It's what they say in Yiddish is called a klotzkasha. It's like it's a question that really everyone should have. If you're thinking about what you're doing, instead of just going around like a zombie, like a robot, we're mourning, we're in avelus. Why? Talmid Rabbi Akiva passed away. Today we're stopping. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai passed away. What just happened over here?
His soul was freed to get his reward.
So this takes us back, and the other ones. So this takes us back really to what we spoke about last week. If you remember, we spoke about this letter from the Alter Rebbe, not last week, it was last class, it was a little while ago before Pesach.
3 weeks ago.
More than, maybe even more, the week before Pesach also I wasn't there. About 4 weeks ago. So, no. That's next letter. This is a letter that the Alter Rebbe sent to the Chassidim after the passing of the great Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Haradach. And in this letter, the Alter Rebbe is telling the Chassidim how they can continue to have their connection, their attachment to the tzaddik, what's called hiskashrus. And the reason is because what we did last time is we re-examined the nature of what is life. What does life mean in the first place? And the question that we asked last time, if you recall, was, what is life? And when the time comes after 120 years, when the neshama leaves the guf and the soul leaves the body, do we say that the person died, but the neshama lives on? Or do we say the person lives on and the body died? Remember we asked that last time?
Yeah.
Which one is it? And what's the answer to that question? We explained, well, that really depends what a person's life was all about. A person's life is a spiritual life. A person's life is a soulful life. So that person, their life over here in this world was a neshama life. That life continues, just the body dies, but that person lives on. But if a person, while here in this world, the life that they had was a guf life, was a body life, body priorities, physical and material priorities, then when that person, when the time comes and the soul leaves the body, that person dies. The neshama lives on, but that person died. And that's really what differentiates and separates the other students of Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shimon.
But you're saying the same thing. You're saying that the body dies and the soul lives on.
No, but
In both cases, you're saying the same thing.
no. I'm saying in one case, the person lives on and the body dies. In the other case, the person dies and the soul lives on.
Opposite.
No, it's very different. Person lived a life 70, 80, 100, 120 years here in this world. That life that person is living, did it die? If a person lives a neshamadika life, no. The life that they were leading continues. So the only thing that died is the body, but the life that they were leading over here in this life continues.
David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayam.
On the other hand, a person who lives a life of materialism, a life associated and identified with the body's desires, so when that person dies, that person died. The neshama lives on, but that person died. In other words, 70, 80 years, that person's running around chasing a dollar and chasing some honor and chasing pleasure. All that, his entire life, his or her entire life comes crashing to an end. The neshama lives on, but the neshama wasn't that person's life. The person had a neshama, but that wasn't their life. So the person dies, the neshama lives on. On the other hand, a person whose entire life is neshama, so that person didn't die. Whatever, that person's life continues and the body dies.
So it could be in the neshama or the body.
Exactly. Sheldon, you understand what we're saying?
I understand what you're saying, but it
But-
amounts to the same thing because the body dies and the soul still lives on.
So you don't understand what I'm saying. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai embodied the idea of soulful living a neshamadika life. Everything about him was neshama. In fact, he's the one who wrote the Zohar, and the Zohar is the neshmasa de'iraisa. Zohar is the neshama of Torah. On the day that he passed away, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai spoke about his tremendous love that he has for Hashem, be'achida, be'lehita, how I am one with Hashem. I'm totally ablaze. I have a fiery love for Hashem. The body and the body's concerns weren't very important to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So when he passed away, as a person who lived a neshama life his entire life, he tells his students, he says, I'm not dying. My life is just continuing, but continuing at a higher level. And everything that I wanted to accomplish over here in this world, experience Hashem and my relationship with Hashem, right now is going to be heightened. Why? Because when I'm down here in this world, my body actually inhibits my ability to fully connect to Hashem. So therefore, I want you to be happy. For me, it's a hilula. What is a hilula? It's like a chasana. It's like a wedding. I'm being reunited with Hashem. My life over here is continuing at a higher level. There's nothing to be sad about. The students of Rebbe Akiva, however, their lives weren't fully neshama lives. What is the proof that their lives weren't fully neshama lives? Why did they die? They died because they didn't have respect one for another. Where does a lack of respect come from? A lack of respect comes from bodily identity. Because you have a body, I have a body, you have a body. And from our body's perspective, we're all different, we're all separate. And therefore we're competing with each other. And therefore we cannot get along with each other. From the neshama perspective, we all have one neshama, we're all one. So the fact that the students of Rebbe Akiva didn't have respect for each other, that tells us that they prioritized body over neshama, body over soul. And if you prioritize body over soul, then when they died, and that's sad. Because their bodies died. So this goes back to what we spoke about last time, which is the idea of, again, redefining what life is all about.
Other question. How many years that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was niftar after the last one from the 24,000 Talmidim died?
I don't know.
It took a lot of years.
I don't know. I don't know.
They don't talk about it?
I didn't say they don't talk about it. I said I don't know. If you look in maybe Seder Hadoros, Seder Olam, it talks about it, but I don't know. I don't know offhand.
Okay.
So, a tzaddik's life is neshama life, and as we said last time, we quoted the Gemara. That we quoted the way the sages, when they talk about passing away, they say shavik chaim l'chol chai, which means when a tzaddik passes away, the tzaddik leaves life for all those who are alive. Which means, what is the tzaddik's life? As we said last time, a tzaddik's life is avas Hashem and yiras Hashem and emunah. That's what the tzaddik's life is. Tzaddik's life is all about his or her relationship with Hashem, the love they have for Hashem, the reverence they have for Hashem, the emunah, their belief in Hashem. And that's something, those are spiritual things. They don't pass away, they don't go anywhere. And those who are connected to the tzaddik can connect to that even after the tzaddik passes away also. So that's what Alter Rebbe, that's the message ultimately that Alter Rebbe is giving to the Chassidim of Remendel of Haradak, Remendel, also known as Remendel of Vitebsk. He's saying, yes, your tzaddik passed away, but you have to understand. Your Rebbe wasn't a body. Your Rebbe was a neshama. Your Rebbe's life was avos Hashem, yiras Hashem, and emunah. So therefore, the fact that the body is no longer there does not impede your ability to be able to connect to your Rebbe. And how do you connect to your Rebbe? So the Rebbe says over here two things. Number one, he talks about this idea of your Rebbe has every tzaddik has a unique brand of avos Hashem and yiras Hashem and emunah. Every tzaddik is different and is unique. You know, no two tzaddikim are the same. No two tzaddikim avodas Hashem are the same. No two tzaddikim have the same avos Hashem and yiras Hashem. By a chassid connecting to that unique life of his or her Rebbe, by a chassid connecting to it and emulating it, that is how you remain connected to the Rebbe. However, the Alter Rebbe adds in a very important condition over here, and the Alter Rebbe says that in order to remain connected to the Rebbe, he places a big emphasis over here, requires love. I want to read inside a few lines, which we did last time, but I want to do it again inside. We're going to start again from let's go all the way back. Let's start to Vayihi, page Kuf Mem Vav, which is opposite of page 290. Seven lines to the top. Vayihi, and it comes to pass. B'halis Hashem ruchei v'nishmasei. B'halis Hashem ruchei, when Hashem brings up to him the ruach, the spirit of the tzaddik, v'nishmasei elav yesef, and Hashem gathers to himself the neshama. V'ya'ala be'ilu yachar ilu, and the tzaddik goes up level after level, ad rum ha'mailas, until the highest level. So what happens? Shavak chayi ruach pu'ulasai. The tzaddik leaves over his life, that which he accomplished here in this world. Asher avad ba lefanim Yisrael, that which he served Hashem. up until this point, amongst Klal Yisrael, which is Pulas Tzaddik L'chaim, that which the tzaddik does, that is the life of the tzaddik. The tzaddik leaves that over L'chol Chai. He leaves it over to all those who remain alive over here in this world. What does that mean? Who does he leave it over for? His life. The tzaddik gives us his life. But to who? He nefesh kol chai. That is the soul of every person. Hakshura b'nafshay, who is connected to the tzaddik. Bechevli avoisais avarabba, with thick ropes of tremendous love. Va'avas olam, an eternal love. Baltimit lenetzach, which can never be budged from his place. Let's continue. Asher mi'oi shachafetz chaim. Who is the person who seeks life? What's the life we're talking about over here? The life of the tzaddik, the life of the Rebbe. L'dofka ba'Hashem chaim. Someone who wants to connect to Hashem, ba'avidosei tidbak nafshay. That person should grab for himself and connect to the avodah of the tzaddik. Then that person over here in this world is connected in the bundle of life. Es Hashem, connected to Hashem, b'chaye ruach hapenu, through connecting to the life of ruach hapenu, this great tzaddik, the breath of our nostrils. Asher amarnu b'tzile nichye b'goyim. That tzaddik who we said we will live in a shade amongst the goyim. Asher shavak lanu, this tzaddik left us his life. B'kol echad ve'echad, within every single one of us, kifi bechinas hiskashrusei be'emes, relative to that person's true connection, va'avasei ahavas emes atahira, true love, mekerev ish v'leiv amik, from the depths of the heart, ki ham kamayim aponim b'chulu. Because just like water reflects a face, hearts reflects hearts. When we love a tzaddik, the tzaddik loves us back. So here, this is a very interesting idea. Al Rebbe is saying, you want to connect to the tzaddik after he passes away? He's saying you connect to the tzaddik by connecting to the avodah of the tzaddik. Well, every tzaddik has a unique and distinct avodah Hashem. Going and connecting to that, but it has to be with love. And I think this is one of the big chidushim of Chassidus. You know, before Chassidus came along, there was the concept of a Rebbe. Not a Rebbe like a Chassidus, but there was the Rosh Yeshiva. There was the Rav. There was the Rav of the city. And if someone wanted to learn Torah, you went to your Rosh Yeshiva. You went to the Goyen. One of the differences between a Rosh Yeshiva student relationship and a Rebbe Chassid relationship is this idea of love.
With kashrut.
Love. What hiskashrus? What is connection? How do you connect to someone?
And you love someone.
You don't connect to someone through being scared of them, through love. Is there an element of yira in the relationship between a Rebbe and a Chassid? Absolutely, 100%. A Chassid has yira from the Rebbe. Yira, I don't mean fear that the Rebbe is going to do something bad to him. A Chassid has a reverence for the Rebbe, an awe for the Rebbe. There's no question about that. But at the end of the day, the yira does not encapsulate the connection between a Rebbe and a Chassid. There's a yom where the Rebbe says that the Rebbes, they would have an avodah every so often to think about their chassidim and about their love for their chassidim. It's a two-way street. It's not only that the chassidim love the Rebbe, it's k'mayim apanim lapanim. The Rebbe loves the chassidim, and this love, any Rebbe we see, the tremendous love that the Rebbe has for his chassidim, and chassidim love their Rebbe back with a crazy love. That's the hiskashrus, and that's the connection. There's a story, I might have said this in the past. The story, it's a little of a crazy story, but it illustrates the idea. You know, the Rav of this shul, his name is Rabbi Merazov. So this Rabbi Merazov, his grandfather, his name was Rabbi Mendel Merazov, passed away around 5 years ago. Passed away at the age of 101. And so this is a story. I used to go for bring every once in a while with Mendel Merazov, hear stories from him. I'm actually not sure that I heard this story that I'm going to say now from him. Usually I say stories that I heard from him, but this story is somewhat of a famous story, although I'm not sure I heard it from him, but it has to do with him, which is like this. Mendel Merazov's father, his name was Reb Chanya, very famous chassid, so this is the Rav of this shul, his great-grandfather. His name was Reb Chanya Merazov, and he was a gabbai by the Rebbe Rashab, and then later by the Frierdiker Rebbe, by the Rebbe Rayatz. The Rebbe Rashab left Lubavitch, had to run away from Lubavitch during World War I in 1915. Cheshvan of Tafresh Ayin Vav. At first, he didn't. It wasn't thought that he was leaving for good, but it ended up that's really when Lubavitch left Lubavitch. 1915, it left it for good. The Rebbe's never came back there. He had to run away. He went first to I think he ended up eventually in Rostov, and that's where the Rebbe Rashab passed away in Rostov in 1920. And the Frierdiker Rebbe never. I mean, maybe he went back for a visit to Kibbutz Avos, but that was 1915 is when Lubavitch, as the capital city of Chabad, came to an end. But the Rebbe left, but the Chassidim remained behind. Including Reb Chanya. Reb Chanya also stayed behind with his family, hoping the Rebbe is going to come back. And at this time, Reb Chanya's wife was pregnant with Reb Mendel Merazah. Mendel Merazah was born on Tainus Esther of Tafresh Ayin Vav. So the Mendel Merazah was born a few months after the Rebbe Rashab left. He was born on Tainus Esther of 1916. So the Rebbe had left. Now, just one other point is that this Chanya Merazov, this was his second marriage. He was married once, and he had children, and his first wife passed away. And now he got married a second time, and now his wife was pregnant with the first child. Their first child. Afterwards, they had another few children, but this was the first. This is the first child. She was pregnant with her first child. It wasn't his first child. He had a few children, but this was her first child. And one day, there's a fire in Lubavitch. We don't understand what it means, fires, like it was back then. Everything was combustible. The houses were combustible. There were a number of big fires in Lubavitch throughout the years. Sadly, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books of manuscripts of the writings of the Rabbeim were destroyed in these fires. And in fact, the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, we only have a third of it, whereas the other 2/3 was burned. Many, many volumes. There's a famous story. I know we're going off a little on the side. There's a famous story that the Alter Rebbe. Sheldon, I don't know if you're going to appreciate the story. There's a famous story. The Alter Rebbe, he wrote. Let's see. Let me say the story, and we'll see if you appreciate it. Okay. He wrote a sefer in Chassidus, the Alter Rebbe, and he had it bound from both sides. Imagine a sefer not bound on both sides. And on the cover, the Alter Rebbe wrote, "No one is allowed to open this or look into this." The day came, there was a fire. The book was burnt, along with other manuscripts. The Alter Rebbe went to his son, the Mittler Rebbe, and said, "No, did you at least learn what it said in the book?" He says,
Not at all.
"You saw you wrote warnings, dire warnings not to open it." Alter Rebbe says, "Okay, but where's your Mesiras Nefesh for Chassidus?" Despite the warnings, you should have learned it anyways. It's Chassidus. Lou Sheldon, you appreciate, you don't appreciate, you don't appreciate. Okay, I wasn't wrong. I know my customers. So there's the fire in Lubavitch. And by the way, it's not only the Sfarim, but also the Rebbe's Hoif. The whole courtyard was burnt down more than once also. As soon as Chanya hears that there's a fire, like a madman, he runs out of his house and runs straight to the Rebbe's courtyard to try to save the Ksavim, to try to save the manuscripts. Leaving at home his pregnant wife with his kids from his first marriage. In other words, it wasn't even her kids, and there's a fire going on. This wasn't very good for their Shalom Bayis. Wasn't good for their Shalom Bayis. In fact, she was very upset about this, and the Rebbe Rashab's wife, Rebbe Shnei Sarah, had to do some marriage therapy to repair the marriage after that. And when he was asked afterwards, he says, "How do you do that? How do you leave your wife, your pregnant wife, and your kids, and go for the Ksavim?" He responded, he said, you're right. I don't know. I had a brain freeze. When I heard there was a fire, the only thing that I could think about was Iksalim. Was it the right thing to do? No. But I went Meshuggah. That's what he said.
That part I like.
That what?
That part I
That he
like.
accepted the...
Yes.
But there's a point over here. This doesn't come from Meira. This didn't come from reverence for the Rebbe. His love for the Rebbe was so strong and so powerful that when there was a fire, that was the only thing he could think about was saving the Rebbe's manuscripts. Now, it's not about debating whether he was right or whether he was wrong. He himself admitted that obviously he should have stayed. That's not the point. The point is bringing out the intensity of the love the Chassidim have for the Rebbe. And that's something which is unique to the Rebbe-Chassid relationship. But that's the connection. When I learned Torah from Rosh Yeshiva, okay, so I learned Torah from him. Am I connected to the Rosh Yeshiva, or am I connected to the Torah that he gives me? Am I enjoying the Torah he gives me? By Chassid Rebbe, when we talk about his kashrus, when we say connected to the Rebbe, like v'nafshei kshura b'nafshei, you say in the pasuk, right? And that Yaakov's life was connected, was attached to Binyamin. Does that mean that he had moira of Binyamin? There was a love, and that is the connection that a chassid has with the Rebbe. Actually, just finished reading a book now. There was a chassid who passed away in 1990. His name was Rabbi Yaakov Yehuda Hecht, better known as Rabbi J.J. Hecht. And a great man in many ways. And one of the stories over there was that in the very last years of his life, he passed away young. He passed away, he was around 65 when he passed away, 66. So he was a Rav of a shul in East Flatbush. And we know that in Lubavitch comes some Chastera, so Crown Heights empties out, and what's called Tahalacha, right? All over. So there was a bunch of people who also went to his shul, to dance HaKodesh. And afterwards, after the HaKodesh, they sat down in the shul, and they made they had l'chaim, Fabring for a few minutes, and then they all walked back together to 770, including Rabbi Hecht. We go out to HaKodesh every year. As he was walking with this group of Bachrim, and he was also after a little l'chaim, he says, I'll tell you. He said, I had a dream. It was last night or today, I had a dream. And in this dream, I very much wanted to give the Rebbe a kiss. Really, really wanted to give the Rebbe a kiss. And I couldn't. He said over a dream. They come into 770. HaKodesh had already started. The race has already started. The Rebbe's there. Imagine the packed crowd. But Rebbe Hecht was one of the older, more venerated Chassidim, so he had a place. So he gets up on one of the tables and he's walking on top of the table, walking to his place. The Rebbe looks up. The Rebbe sees him in front of the crowd, thousands of people. The Rebbe sees him, and the Rebbe blew him a kiss.
Wow.
Which is unheard of. Unheard of. The Rebbe blew him a kiss. On his way home, he said, I knew that the Rebbe could read my thoughts, but I didn't know the Rebbe also knows my dreams. So that's what he said. But again, this is a symbol of it's what a chassid. A chassid has a deep ava for the Rebbe.
I kissed his hand.
Sorry?
I kissed his hand.
The Rebbe, right?
Yeah.
Right. What Chassidim do for the Rebbe is not out of Meira. The fact that a chassid for his Rebbe goes to the end of the earth for his Rebbe and does whatever the Rebbe wants. And when the Rebbe's wish is my command, it's not because I'm scared that I'll be struck dead otherwise, or I'll go to get it. There's that. When the Rebbe had a heart attack in 1977, some Chastera, Shmini Atzeres, Tavshel Lamed Ches. So the Rebbe was in 770. You know that the Rebbe was in 770 for a few weeks. The doctors wanted the Rebbe to go to the hospital. The Rebbe refused, so they brought an ICU to the Rebbe's room. And the Rebbe didn't go home for a few weeks. The Rebbe's room became his hospital room, and the Rebbe didn't go home. And on Rosh Chodesh Kislev, for the first time the Rebbe went on till today, Rosh Chodesh Kislev in Lubavitch is a Yom Tov, commemorating that the nest, because it wasn't stam. It wasn't a little heart attack. We're talking about
Yes.
Massive, yeah. I mean, the doctors, they didn't want to say anything at the time, but afterwards they said that they didn't think that the Rebbe was going to last much longer. It was massive, massive heart attack.
In 1977,
Yeah,
really?
yeah.
Wow.
It's the first heart
It's
attack.
like 20 years before he was nifter.
So it was again a huge heart attack. Very, very scary times. Chodesh Kislev, the Rebbe goes home. The Rebbe leaves 770, goes to his car. And when the Rebbe left 770, the moment the Rebbe left, the Chassidim erupted in such incredible dancing and singing. We don't want to talk about how much mashka was spilled that night by the Fabregans. Now, my father is, he's not in any way, he doesn't touch really mashka too much at all. He's not from the Russian stream anyways, learned Torah with us, was never educated in that way. My father says, yes, Chodesh Kislev, I was under the table like everyone else was. He was, the Simcha, the Rebbetzin Chaim Mushka, the Rebbe's wife. So she was watching this whole thing. Why? Because she was upstairs in the Friedrich Rebbe's apartment. Friedrich Rebbe's apartment is the second floor of 770. They have the main floor. I'm not talking about the downstairs with the big show. I'm talking about you have the main floor. Close to everyone dollars. That's the main floor at 770, where there's the small base medrash. Then the second floor is the apartment of the Friedrich Rebbe till today. It's not touched. It's the Friedrich Rebbe's office, his Iggeres room, the dining room where you bring. So she was upstairs, and she was looking out the window, and she saw, a few minutes later she went. In general, the Rebbetzin never walked with the Rebbe. The Rebbetzin was a very private individual who was barely ever seen in public. She never came to Fabringen, she never came to the davenings. She was, most Chassidim never saw her. He was the ultimate in Hatznei Aleches and Sneas, and totally, completely out of the limelight. So the Rebbe went, and then she snuck out a little later, and she went home also, and she walked out. She sees the Rebbe going out. She saw the dancing. She watched a few minutes, and she turned around to someone who was there and said, even I never knew just how much the Chassidim loved my husband. Never had any idea. Just seeing that the emotions, right? And then 10 years later, there was somewhat of a repeat of that. Maybe some of you remember this one. There was a court case about the Sfarim.
Yeah,
And the Rebbe was so bothered by it, by what was going on. During the actual court case for a few weeks, the Rebbe went to the oil every single day. The Rebbe spent a few hours every single day davening at the oil. Just to give you an idea of how much, and they saw it. People, Chassidim saw in the Rebbe just how much it was hurting in the whole thing. Now, to say that the Chassidim, they fully really understood, why is this bothering the Rebbe so much? A few Sfarim, we could buy them back. But for whatever reasons, which is obviously beyond the scope of today's lesson, today's shir, when on Hey Tevis, when the ruling came in that the Rebbe won the case, it was a week of celebration. Literally a week of celebration. I was a young boy then in Michigan. We flew in for it together with thousands of Chassidim. And it was crazy. For 7 days straight. After 7 days, the Rebbe kind of called the halt it and said, okay, we're back on Yud Beis Tevis. The Rebbe is okay, time to get serious over here. And the Rebbe then demanded that this says it's 30 days until the yard site of the Friedrich Rebbe, Yud Shvat. And everyone, every 10 days, should take a test. And everyone wants to get the results and the learning and everything. The Rebbe was okay. But there was once again, it does make a difference. It wasn't about the Sfarim even. It was about seeing that weight lifted off the Rebbe's shoulders and the joy that brought to the Chassidim because of the love of the Chassidim to the Rebbe. And this is something which is, again, unique in the Rebbe Chassid relationship. And what Alter Rebbe is saying over here is that this does not stop. This doesn't stop after the passing of a tzaddik. That after a passing of a tzaddik, we can still connect to the tzaddik. However, we can still connect to the tzaddik, but at the same time, it requires two things. That's really what Alter Rebbe is saying over here to connect to the life of the tzaddik, because the tzaddik doesn't die. The tzaddik's life continues. But to connect to the life of the tzaddik after he passes away is two things. Number one, as the Alter Rebbe says, "Ba'avidosoi tidbak nafshe." What was the avodah of your Rebbe? And you have to keep on going with that avodah. Whatever the avodah was, connected, because the avodah of the tzaddik is the tzaddik. The avodah of the tzaddik is the life of the tzaddik. You have to connect it. And the connection has to be, in the words of Alter Rebbe, "Bechevli avoises ava rabba." We're talking thick ropes of great love, and then we continue to connect to the tzaddik even after the tzaddik passes away. And now we'll continue. We're going to start 7 lines from the bottom, where it says, "V'zeu shekosov." Zeu shekosov b'Zohar HaKodesh, and that which it says in the Zohar, the tzaddik di ispater ishtakach b'kulo almen yater b'bechayoy. But a tzaddik that passes away, this is what the Zohar says, tzaddik who passes away is present in all the worlds, yater b'bechayoy, more so than when he was alive. Dahainu, which means shegam bezeho elam hamaisa, that also in this physical world, hayoim la'aseisom, a world which is defined by action. Hayoim, today, our job over in this world is to act. Ishtakach yatir, the tzaddik is found even more so than beforehand. Amen. This is an incredible statement. When a tzaddik passes away, he's present in all the worlds more so than during his lifetime. All the worlds includes our world. It means that a tzaddik, think about this. We think when a tzaddik passes away, that's it. He departed this world. It says the Zohar. Not only didn't he depart this world, he's more present here. How does that make sense? On two levels. First of all, it seems that the tzaddik isn't here at all. Forget about more. He's not here. What does it mean he's not here? Olam ha, says Dr. Rebbe says, our world is Olam hamaisa, is the world of action. You want to say that tzaddik and we remain spiritually connected to the tzaddik, but that's not our world. The definition of our world is not spiritual connection. The definition of our world is action. And in the world of physicality, in the world of action, the tzaddik isn't here. That's number one. And even if you're going to argue that tzaddik is here, he's here even more so than when he was alive. How do you make that argument? What does that mean? Dr. Rebbe says, Ki hamaise godel, or godil, the actions that we do, based on the inspiration that we have from the tzaddik, they grow. Godel v'hilach, gidule gidulen, and we have the offspring of the offspring, the children of the children, the outgrowths of the outgrowths. Min oyer zaru ala tzaddik, from the light which is planted by the tzaddik, besoda asher beirachei Hashem, in the field which is blessed by Hashem. And let's stop over here. What does this mean? As we will explain in Yetz Hashem, later on in this chapter, in the beer on this Perek, when a tzaddik passes away, so at that moment, that is the moment of fulfillment and maturation of all of the avodah of the tzaddik here in this world. All of his avodah goes up together with him, and what happens is that causes a great revelation of Hashem. But where is that revelation of Hashem? In what is called the soda. Now we talk about, for those of you who are into Kabbalah, you've maybe heard the term. It's also in the before Kiddush, Chakal Tapuchin Kadishin. What is Chakal Tapuchin Kadishin? Is the holy apple field, holy apple orchard, which is a reference to Malchus of Atzilus. Malchus of Atzilus is called a soda. There is that, because a tremendous revelation of the infinite light of Hashem to enter Malchus of Atzilus. Malchus of Atzilus is the source of all of creation. From that, from Malchus of Atzilus, from that light that enters Malchus of Atzilus, He continues and says, Hameir la'aretz, some of that light comes down here into this world. V'chutzais, and not only into this world, but also into chutz la'aretz. Alter Rebbe is saying that, why? Because Remendel of Haradak was in Eretz Yisrael, but Alter Rebbe is also addressing the Chassidim or in chutz la'aretz. V'gam anachnu eila pei hayoim kulonu chayim. And also all of us over here today, all of us who are alive, B'drachav derech HaKodesh yikori la, that follow in the ways of the tzaddik, which are the holy ways. So the Alter Rebbe is saying over here, there's the Giduli Gidulin, which means, actually, I saw two different explanations of what Alter Rebbe is saying over here. One explanation is that there is this light which enters the world, which inspires this Talmidim of the tzaddik, and then when those Talmidim inspire yet other people, that's the Giduli Gidulim. That is the, what's a good word for Gidulin in English? Gidulin is
growing
produce, the produce of the produce, right? Produce of the produce. And that has an actual impact over here in this world. Meaning, here in this world, people are doing mitzvahs because of the tzaddik. An even greater measure than when the tzaddik was alive. And that's what it means when we say, Tzaddika di ispata, that a tzaddik who passes away, ishtakach, bekulu alma, is present in all the worlds, including in our world, the world of action, even more so. What does it mean, the tzaddik? The life of the tzaddik, which is kedusha, is present even in the world of action, because ultimately the tzaddik is inspiring action after he passes away, even more so than before he passed away. Zois ba'avodas Hashem b'mili d'shmaya. All of this, the Rebbe says, what?
No, toward the next page.
All of this is regarding our avodas Hashem, spiritual matters. In other words, tzaddikim. There's one thing that the Chassidim are saying. We had a Rebbe. This is addressed to the Chassidim of Rabbi Nachman Mendel of Vitebsk, Rabbi Nachman Mendel of Haradak. We had a Rebbe, and we were connected to him, and now we've lost that. We've lost that connection. So that's the first part of this letter. The Alter Rebbe is addressing and saying, don't worry, you didn't lose the Rebbe. The Rebbe is still alive. And you can still connect to the Rebbe. By connecting through his avodah, by connecting with love, that's the first part of the letter. But there's another aspect to a Rebbe, and maybe it's of secondary importance, but there's another aspect, which is, when do Chassidim turn to the Rebbe? Chassidim turn to the Rebbe when they need help also, b'mili d'alma, in physical things, material matters. They need the Rebbe to daven for them. So that's another reason why to say, what do we do? The Rebbe is gone, and what now? And that's not the Rebbe continues and says, we immediately the Alma, when it comes to worldly matters, b'feirush itmar b'Zohar HaKodesh, we learn. It's explicitly stated in the Zohar, the tzaddikaya maginin al alma, tzaddikim, they protect this world. Uv'misosein yater mib'chayehim. Tzaddikim, they protect this world.
More than in their lifetime.
Sorry?
More than in their lifetime.
When after they pass away, even more so than in their lifetime. If it weren't for the tefillahs of tzaddikim in the next world, the world would not even be able to exist for one moment.
That's a tough one.
So he's saying, but the Rebbe passed away. What now? The answer, where am I going to get my brachas from? Who's davening for me? The answer is, it's still a but. Whoever was closer to the Rebbe during his life, Kodim lebracha is also earlier in terms of getting a bracha. In terms of the ava, the love that they have for the Rebbe. With this, we've concluded the original letter that Alter Rebbe wrote. And then, as I mentioned last week, afterwards, Alter Rebbe is going to beer on Alter Rebbe himself wrote a whole beer on this, and that's what we're going to start learning in Mirza Hashem next week. We have a few minutes left. The topic over here is the idea of tzaddikim and the continued brachas that they give and the continued looking out for their chassidim. So, I'll tell you a story.
By the way, Rav Chaim Vital, your tzeit was Chavtet yesterday.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I originate in Michigan, right? I'm a native of Michigan. That's where I grew up. And my parents are shluchim of the Rebbe in West Bloomfield, Michigan. There's someone, his name is Akiva, and he already for around 30 years came about Tshuva. He came from a very, very secular family. We talk about a very secular family. In other words, okay, he's in his 70s today, so he's not a young man. Most people, most Yidden, were in their 70s, even if they grew up in a secular family in the United States, but they know what Yom Kippur is. They know what a Seder is. In his family, there was no Yom Kippur. There was no Seder. There was nothing, literally nothing. And he became from. And then, I don't know exactly how long ago, maybe around 10 years ago, he had a brother. Brother's name was Jimmy. And this Jimmy was not from at all. In fact, this Jimmy was married. I believe it was his third marriage. And none of his wives were Jewish. Not the first, not the second, and not the third. None of them were. And this Jimmy, yeah, like once or twice, maybe he came to my father's Chabad house when there was a special dinner on for which Akiva maybe made, in other words, but he didn't have any connection. And one day he becomes ill with Yana Machla. Quite ill. So this Akiva speaks to his brother and tries to find out a little information about what the plans are. He says, yeah, cremate it. Akiva says, you can't do that. And he speaks to him. But Yiddish guy says, listen, if you get cremated, I'm not going to be able to sit Shiva. I won't be able to say Kaddish. He had a few conversations with him, but it got nowhere. Until one time, his brother told him, listen, got angry at him, screamed at him, says, enough. I don't want to hear about this anymore from you. This is my decision. It's a private decision. I don't believe what you believe. Leave me alone. And meanwhile, his situation was deteriorating. And one night, Akiva was lying in bed. It's around 2 o'clock in the morning. He's tossing and turning. He's so bothered by what's going on. And he says, you know what? I have to write to the Rebbe. Gets out of bed, goes to his computer, goes to there's a website where you can fill in the form and you submit it and they take it and they take the request to the oil. And he wrote, he says, Rebbe, here's the story, here's the situation. I tried doing whatever I can. I've had no luck so far. I did what I can. Now it's your turn. And he went to sleep. The next day, he gets a phone call from his brother, Jimmy. Jimmy says, Kenny, that's his guy, Kenny, please come over, I want to talk to you. Kiva goes over to his house, and there's Jimmy, very, very weak. He says, Kenny, you know what? Changed my mind. We're going to have a burial. Kiva says, why? What made you change your mind? He said, last night I had a dream. And in the dream, the rabbi came to me. Kiva says, the rabbi, which rabbi? The Lubavitcher Rebbe? He says, no. Rabbi Silberberg.
Your father.
My father.
Your father was alive.
Father is alive. Yeah. That's what I'm saying is, he didn't know the Rebbe. He knew my father. He didn't know the Rebbe. He says, Rabbi Silberberg came to me in a dream and told me, Jimmy, you were born a Jew, you're going to die a Jew, and you're going to be buried like a Jew. And I woke up and I realized that's what I have to do. So call the lawyer, let's change the papers, and I'm going to be buried. So they called the lawyers. I think it took till the next day. Changed all the papers. He signed a few hours later. He slipped into a coma. A few days later, he was gone, and he was buried like a Yid.
Wow.
Wrote a letter to the Rebbe. Immediately, the Rebbe sent his shliach, his emissary, to do the work, and the job was taken care of. And this is a little what we're talking about here in the Perek. You have to realize that Yater Bechayohi, and the brachas are still there, and the Yeshuas are still there, and davening. And again, that's the two parts of this Peder. Part number one is how the Hiskashrus remains. That's number one. And number two, the Rabbi continues, says also when it comes to physical matters, also we have to realize that the Rebbe is still there davening for us, etc. Now, as I said, next week, Mr. Hashem, we're going to start learning the beer on this explanation. And the beer is going to be a big chiddush. Because up until now, in this part of the Peder, till now, what did we learn? We connect to a tzaddik during his lifetime. And after he passes away, we can continue that connection. What we're going to find out is actually that after a tzaddik passes away, the possibility to connect to a tzaddik is actually even greater than it was during his lifetime. And how is that? That, Mr. Hashem, we will do next week.
Thank you.